We're seeing a lot of white flowers in the springtime in the Cove Forest. A lot of white ephemerals blooming this time of year. And here's another one that's very common all along this hillside. Everywhere we're walking, we're seeing this today. This is our native chickweed. There are two major species of chickweed that you see in North America. One is Stellaria medea, which is actually a European plant that was introduced here. And if you have a garden, you've probably pulled out chickweed by the handfuls. It's very, very common. Sometimes it's called mouse-eared chickweed because the shape of the leaves look like little mouse ears. But this is our Appalachian native. This is called greater chickweed. Stellaria pubera is its botanical name, and it has a much bigger flower and a much bigger leaf than the Stellaria medea, or the European chickweed. This plant is not as succulent as chickweed, which is used as a skin healing herb. It's very vulnerary and cooling, helps wounds and burns and abrasions on the skin heal. This plant could be used medicinally in the same way, but it's not quite as effective. I'm touching the stem now, and it's very, very dry. Doesn't have that juicy component that the other Stellaria does. One of the characteristics of this plant, though, that's kind of interesting, and it takes a good eye or a jeweler's loupe or a magnifying glass to notice this, but you would see it on both types of chickweed, is that along the stem on opposite sides is a single row of very fine hairs, and at each leaf juncture, so where we see these opposite leaves, the hairs flip to the other side of the plant. So you have this little tiny row of hairs going up a steady line to the leaf node, and then after that leaf node they switch over to the other side. So kind of a little interesting thing about this plant. I sometimes have students really be puzzled by this one when they're trying to key them out for the first time, because when you first look at it, it appears to have 10 petals. Really what it has is 5 petals that are deeply split. So in a field guide, when you're looking at a botanical key, you'll almost never, you never see a plant with 10 petals. So that really stumps people when they're first trying to learn how to identify things. So this is Stellaria pubera with these very beautiful flowers, very succulent, little, if this was smaller, we could see that it would be a mouse ear. And this is common throughout the forest in the early spring. Here's a really fabulous plant. This is Maidenhair fern. Maidenhair fern is just in the process of unfurling its fronds. You can see on this plant right here, it hasn't really achieved the characteristic horseshoe shape, so it's still in the process of unfolding. I was here last week, and all of these plants were so amazing looking. They had their straight black stems, and then there were these crumpled packets of fronds right at the top getting ready to open up. Maidenhair is really one of the most beautiful ferns we're going to see in the Appalachian forest. It does have some medicinal use. It's been used as a tea for sore throats, as a gargle for hoarseness, and it has a little bit of an expectorant property. I have never really made much medicine out of it because it's such a delicate plant. To tell you the truth, I can't bring myself to harvest it because of how beautiful it is, when I have so many other things like mullein leaf that do something very similar. This plant was also used by the Cherokee in basketry. You can see that this stem is very straight, long, and solid black. And the Cherokee would harvest this and use it to make designs in the baskets. If you go up to Cherokee, North Carolina, or some of the places where they have Cherokee basketry for sale, you're going to see these beautiful black designs in the baskets that's made from Maidenhair fern stems. There was one other use for this plant. Native American women would make a tea out of the fronds and use it as a hair wash, and it would make their hair very shiny. And this was particularly good for dark hair. So this is a very characteristic plant of a deep cove forest, along with all these trillium we're seeing. Here's a little bit of Solomon seal, some foam flower getting ready to bloom. A few little hepaticas here that bloomed a little earlier with their distinctive three-lobed leaf. So again, we're seeing these kind of plant communities over and over again that all like to hang out together. And when you see one, if you slow down and start looking, you're going to see a lot of these other plants too. So this little beauty is a wild geranium. Usually when we think of geraniums, we think of the red flowered plants that people grow in pots. But this is a true geranium, Geranium maculatum, that grows in the forest. It's considered a spring ephemeral, has these very deeply cleft palmate leaves, and then these very delicate 5-petaled purple flowers. This is a plant that we do use as a medicine. The roots of the plant are very astringent, and they're an excellent addition to skin salves, to anything where you're trying to heal the surface of the skin. Adding a little bit of an astringent herb to your skin salves is going to pull the tissues together, and that combined with some of the more vulnerary herbs like comfrey or chickweed are going to do, plantain, are going to do a good job of regenerating damaged skin tissues, and the astringent is going to help pull the tissues together so they heal more quickly. It's not a big root that we see with the geranium. Here's one that I've just dug up. You can see it's more of a rhizome that grows horizontally under the ground, and then the plant comes out of the end. That's a very common characteristic of plants in the forest here. We're going to see this with black cohosh, blue cohosh, bloodroot, this rhizome growth where you can see the leaf scars from past years' growth, and then these little rootlets growing down at the bottom. We would harvest wild geranium after it blooms, so probably in about another 3 weeks after the blooms have faded. One of the common names of this plant, besides wild geranium, is crane's bill. When it goes to seed, these are still buds here, so we can't really see it, but the seed pods have almost like a point on them, and it looks kind of like a crane's bill. And it's a type of seed where when you touch it, when it's ripe, the seeds explode and are thrown far away from the plant. So when the time of year when we would want to harvest crane's bill, we would be seeing those very distinctive seed pods that would tell us that we're harvesting the wild geranium. And this is the root that we would be looking for. We would collect this, we would wash it and cut it very quickly, and then we would make an oil out of it, cooking it in the oven or heating it in some way to infuse the actions of this plant into our oil, and then that would become the salve. So this is our friend wild geranium, and you can see that it's in a setting. We're in a little bit of sunlight now because there's a little clearing here in the forest, but we're starting to see some Mayapples. Here's a little Mayapple, this umbrella-like plant. This one doesn't have a fruit on it. We'll see some in a minute that do, but this is a common companion plant along with bloodroot, foam flower, Solomon seal, maybe some of the dwarf ginseng and the blue cohosh. All of those would be growing in this community.